Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye urges the public sector to lead the nation's reform efforts. She says a successful campaign would provide an example to companies in the private sphere. Prosecutors in Seoul launch a second round of raids on the affiliates of Lotte Group as the probe deepens into the conglomerate's alleged slush funds. First, China says it's banning exports of more dual-use goods to North Korea to comply with the latest UN sanctions on the regime. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, June 15th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye has called on the heads of Korea's public institutions to spearhead reforms in finance, labor and education. She says restructuring efforts are required to counter the economic challenges facing the country. Our Song Ji-son starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye says Korea is facing a very difficult time in which the country must overcome uncertainties both at home and abroad, making it harder for the economy to take another leap forward. At a meeting Tuesday with the CEOs of public institutions, President Park stressed the public sector is key to leading reforms in finance, labor and education.
경제의 체질을 개선하고 그 성과를 국민들께서 체감할 수 있도록 만들어야 합니다. 그 가운데에서도 공공개혁은 민간 부문의 변화를 유도하는 개혁의 출발점으로 그 책임이 막중합니다.
Since taking office in 2013, President Park has pushed to normalize public institutions by focusing on reducing their debts, which started dropping for the first time in 2014. 120 public agencies have adopted performance-based salaries this year, in addition to adopting a wage peak system last year, aimed at giving more jobs to young people by allowing older employees to stay in their jobs if they take a pay cut. President Park also said employment rewards must be based on performance and not on seniority, and that reforms must continue despite all the potential obstacles.
앞으로 개혁을 중단 없이 추진해서 우리 경제의 재도약과 미래 세대의 일자리 창출을 위한 중추가 되어주기를 바랍니다.
President Park stressed that reforms are not something that can be postponed and that failure is not an option. She added that job creation must grow out of the creative economy through a convergence of the public and private sectors. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
So, as we just heard there, President Park Geun-hye laid out her key public sector reform plans with government ministers and heads of public institutions on Tuesday. For more on which sectors will be subject to reform and what outcomes the government expects, Lee Min-young reports.
The main essence of the government's reform plan is to remove traditional inefficiencies that have long been plaguing the public sector. The core focus is three sectors: energy, environment, and education. Those areas will be subject to a large-scale reshuffle as the industry's monopolistic structure has triggered numerous problems, such as poor management and snowballing debt. The government has been pushing for key public sector reforms since late 2013, and as an extension of this program, the government vowed to make structural adjustments to divisions that overlap and downsize non-core businesses. Opening doors to private companies into sectors that used to be state-run is also part of the big plan, all intended to maximize efficiency in management and revitalize the economy. The government also announced it would merge and reshuffle some institutions of the energy and environmental sector, including major public corporations such as the Korea Coal Corporation.
The Korea Coal Corporation will gradually cut production and reduce the size of its staff.
The government is expecting that these policies would boost public sector productivity and financial soundness. Recently, the distribution sector of the Korea Railroad Corporation, or KORAIL, went through major structural reform with 47 freight depots being shut down. Korea Land and Housing Corporation and Korea Appraisal Board also experienced a huge shakeup as they transferred a significant portion of their work to private companies for efficient operation. These changes were projected to cut or redistribute the budget by 7.6 trillion won, or roughly $6.4 billion. As the new reform plan is expected to affect up to 3,500 government workers, some point out that the government should come up with proper follow-up measures to prevent any backlash. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
Now, prosecutors are leaving no stone unturned as they continue to investigate one of the biggest business titans in the nation. On Tuesday, additional raids were carried out on Lotte Group. For more on the probe to expose the conglomerate's suspected slush funds, Kim Min-ji reports.
The investigation into the country's fifth largest conglomerate is forging ahead. Prosecutors launched a second raid on Lotte Group on Tuesday, searching 10 business units including Lotte Engineering and Construction and Lotte Chemical, as well as 5 other locations. Prosecutors say they confiscated account books and documents on land transactions and financial deals among the companies. They believe these firms could be connected to a slush fund created during mergers between Hotel Lotte and 2 of the group's resorts. Prosecutors are also looking into whether Shin Gyuk-ho, the founder of Lotte Group, sold his land to the group's business units at higher prices to create slush funds. Recent data shows that Lotte units have purchased 11 pieces of land from the founder since 2000, with the deals reaching roughly $55 million. The latest move follows a raid of the group's headquarters and 6 of its units on Friday as part of a widening probe into the slush fund allegations, as well as claims the group stockpiled wealth through internal trading among its business arms. The probe has also triggered negative sentiment, giving Lotte Group a torrid time on the local stock market. Lotte's business units extended their losses on Tuesday, with Lotte Confectionery shedding over 2.5% and Lotte Choesang falling almost 4%. So far in the month of June, Lotte Group's combined market capitalization has shrunk by over $1.8 billion. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, the head of Lotte Group has apologised for causing concern over allegations of financial irregularities that have gripped the conglomerate. He has vowed to fully cooperate with the prosecution's ongoing investigation. Shin Dong-bin made the remarks to reporters at the groundbreaking ceremony for a joint venture chemical plant in Louisiana in the US. Prosecutors in Korea have stepped up their investigation into allegations that Lotte amassed slush funds through illicit means. It's the first time Shin has spoken to the media since the probe began. Amid raids of several Lotte offices this week, Lotte Group has put its initial public offering plan for Hotel Lotte on hold. The IPO plan was a key reform pledge designed to improve the governance structure of the business empire following a bitter succession battle between Shin Dong-bin and his elder brother Shin Dong-ju. The Lotte Group chief said he would try to push ahead with the IPO by the end of the year. South Korea's Navy, Coast Guard and the UN Command have been continuing their joint crackdown on Chinese fishing boats operating illegally off Korea's west coast, and it seems they're going to have to maintain their presence in those waters. On Tuesday evening, Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the military police seized 2 Chinese vessels in neutral waters of the Hangang River estuary between the 2 Koreas and handed them over to the Coast Guard. The estuary is the mouth of the Hangang River that flows through Seoul, and it is considered neutral water bordering the 2 Koreas. The vessels are the first Chinese boats captured since South Korea kicked off its joint military operation with the UN Command last week to try and permanently eradicate illegal fishing activities in that area. China is set to remove more of the items it exports to North Korea as part of international efforts to clamp down on the regime in Pyongyang. The move comes after the UN's nuclear watchdog said North Korea appears to have restarted a plant to produce plutonium from spent nuclear fuel. China says it's part of its efforts to comply with the UN sanctions adopted back in March. The sanctions were put in place in response to the North's fourth nuclear test in January. China's Ministry of Commerce says the banned items could be used to build weapons of mass destruction. The so-called dual-use goods can be used for both civilian and military purposes. Now, it has emerged that North Korea may have added up to 6 more nuclear weapons to its arsenal over the last 18 months. The Washington-based Institute for Science and International Security estimated last year that North Korea had 10 to 16 nuclear weapons as of the end of 2014, and that estimate was based on an analysis of the country's production of weapons-grade uranium and plutonium. However, in a report provided to Reuters on Tuesday, the Institute updated the figures, saying North Korea may have added another 4 to 6 weapons since then, for a total of 13 to 21 or perhaps even more. The report comes after several accounts, including from the IAEA, that North Korea has restarted reprocessing spent nuclear fuel to produce weapons-grade plutonium. And in a separate report and analysis by experts, North Korea may own up to 50 nuclear weapons by the year 2020, just 4 years from now. This scenario was one of the key topics of discussion during a meeting on Tuesday between South Korean and US experts in Seoul. Our Gwon-swa reports.
Time is on North Korea's side, not South Korea's. That's how experts see the situation when it comes to Pyongyang's nuclear weapons development, saying the regime seems to be making its way around whatever sanctions or isolation it faces. South Korean and U.S. specialists gathered at the International Conference on the Korea and U.S. Nuclear Policy Tuesday, hosted by the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. There, they debated how far Pyongyang could go with its nuclear program.
In a worst-case scenario, by 2020, North Korea could have possibly up to 50 nuclear weapons, both plutonium and uranium weapons, as well as more advanced delivery systems and more delivery system options as well.
Town is also the managing editor and producer of 38 North, a website on North Korea issues. She adds, currently, there are no clear signs of a nuclear test.
There has been some activity, a lot of it's very low-level activity as far as we can tell. It could be anything from maintenance to, obviously continued tunneling, but there's nothing that says specifically that there's any imminent threat.
Experts point out that South Korea's single 5-year presidential term, or 1 or 2 U.S. terms, versus Kim Jong-un's lifetime term as North Korea's leader makes it more difficult for Seoul and Washington to maintain tangible policies.
The right mix of the diplomacy, pressure, and deterrence. So currently, I think we are mainly based on this firm deterrence posture. And then based on the firm deterrence capability, actually we can pursue both pressure and the diplomacy.
Although experts agree that's easier said than done, momentum is building as more countries join effective implementation of sanctions that could at least slow North Korea's ambitions. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
The top prosecutor in Paris says the man that stabbed to death a French police commander and his wife recently declared allegiance to the Islamic State group. He added that investigators found the killer had compiled a number of targets, including rappers, journalists, police and public figures. The targets were found after police stormed the victim's home in a suburb some 50 kilometers west of Paris. Officials say the ISIS-inspired attacker stabbed the police commander 9 times in the stomach before holding his wife and 3-year-old son hostage in their home. After negotiations failed, an elite police unit, like the one you can see there, stormed the house and shot the attacker dead. The police chief's wife was found dead as well, but their child was rescued physically unharmed. If the link to ISIS is confirmed, it would be the first militant strike on French soil since the Paris attacks in November of last year that killed 130 people. And the world has been paying tribute to the victims of the nightclub massacre in Orlando. From Seoul to London, tens of thousands have gathered in cities across the globe for vigils to remember the 49 people killed in that horrific terror attack. Oh Jung-hee has more.
People across the world are remembering the 49 victims of the fatal Orlando shooting. At the Stonewall Inn, an LGBT landmark in New York, people laid flowers and candles along with rainbow flags.
It seems like was set out to, make obviously huge impact in this community, and he did, unfortunately.
What we all need to do is we need to kind of rise up above this, because you can't live in fear.
In Germany, some 150 people, including LGBT community members and citizens, participated in an impromptu vigil outside the U.S. Embassy on Monday.
I came here because what happened in the United States yesterday touched me very much. I wanted to show my support and my solidarity with the people and show that we are not indifferent.
In Soho in central London, thousands gathered to hold a 2-minute silence for the victims. Crowds held banners and flowers to show their solidarity with Orlando and its LGBT community in standing against terrorism. Similar vigils were held in Hong Kong, Sydney, and Mexico City.
We can't be with the families of the victims in the United States, but we wanted to go to the embassy to support them and attend a vigil for these youngsters who were killed over there.
Seoul was not an exception. Civic groups and an LGBT community held a candle vigil on Monday evening to show support for the victims and survivors, as well as sexual minorities around the world. Around 400 citizens turned up at the vigil to pay condolences. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Until then, goodbye.